Welcome to Kickoff Countdown, where we talk about the weekend CPL games and all the pressing issues across the league and Canadian soccer. Here today with Armen Bedakian of CanPL.ca and Marty Thompson, also of CanPL.ca. Thanks for coming on, guys.
Thanks for having us, Kurt.
Let's set up the weekend. York9, difficult trip to Blainville, goalless draw. They're okay with that most likely, but they're heading out to the Pacific now for an important match for both teams. Let's set that one up, Armen.
Yeah, it's going to be an interesting match. Both teams are kind of in desperate need of results, points, especially York9, who are still winless in CPL action. So taking on a Pacific FC team, I think at exactly the right time for that team. It's a team that I think is still trying to figure themselves out. And to be fair, both teams are still trying to figure themselves out. But I see York as sort of coming together from that midfield. They're starting to connect a little bit better. We saw signs of that against Blainville, and I think there's points to be taken for York if they're interested.
And York9's on the upswing. Pacific certainly on the downswing. You know, they had to have expected a better result at home to Cavalry in that midweek match. What's Pacific got to do here?
Yeah, I think both tough results for both York9 and Pacific in the Canadian Championship, I think, is fair. If I'm Michael Silberbauer right now, I think there's got to be some major changes. Obviously, good to have Marcus Haber back, but still missing some key players up to injury, and yeah, it's a tough one.
They started so brightly though, Pacific, right?
Yeah,
There's all the fanfare at West Hills. You know, they come in, they get a result over HFX Wanderers. There's so much positivity around the club, and then just decimated by injuries. I mean, how big a loss has Starro been, for Pacific?
Well, he has been the Volkswagen Premier Performer after his one performance, which has made him, a star in that team that they're missing. The other thing he brought was experience. He's a veteran guy in that back line, which is so desperately needed for a team that skews really, really young.
Yeah.
I mean, the guys who've stepped in to replace him, Ryan McCurdy and Lucas McNaughton, they've done well, but I think that having Starro in your back line helps actually kind of calm things down. And when there's so much unpredictability, especially this early in a league, this early in a season, you need that. And the fact that they don't have that, coupled with the loss of Marcus Haber up top due to injury, it left them in a kind of a weird situation.
It's been a little bit disappointing up front for them, right? We talked about Poseidon's Trident, Fisk, Nakajima, Farron. Yeah. Haber's been injured. We're not really sure if Nakajima's healthy. I mean, have they let Pacific down?
But Fisk has been good.
Fisk has been good, yeah.
Ben Fisk has been great. I'm still really not sure about Issei's place in the team. He was kind of playing behind the striker in that Canadian Championship game. Just really didn't do it for me. Yeah, it is interesting going forward, but they do have a couple bright spots.
York9, I mean, excellent at the back so far. In midfield, I think we saw what Afushi brings to them when they were at Cavalry a few weeks back. Really struggled in that first half. They put him in. They start doing well. But going forward, they've struggled just a little bit. It's where does Ryan Telfer play? Cyrus Rollux, he doesn't look like the finished product right now. What do you make of them going forward into this match?
To me, York9 is like a puzzle of the Mona Lisa, and the only thing that's missing are the pieces around the face. Like everything seems to be there, but it's just that last little bit, that last X factor that's missing. I mean, I said it from the beginning of the season that I think this is a team that has the makings of something special, but it requires an instinctual understanding of one another. It requires players to be able to know where their teammates are going to be before they're actually there, because that's sort of how midfield heavy they are. And I don't think that they've gotten it quite yet. The other thing that I'm not quite sure about is like where the goals are really going to come from.
Yeah.
We saw
Simon Ajayi showed he can finish.
Showed that he can score, and I also really like his hustle.
Yeah.
But is that enough? I mean, is that enough to break down some of these CPL back lines? I'm starting to see some holes out wide maybe that need to be addressed.
But the good thing for York9 is they have games in hand, a ton of home games coming up. Let's move on to Calgary, hosting the first Al Clasico. FC Edmonton visits them 6 o'clock Eastern here on OneSoccer. Marty, Al Clasico doesn't get bigger than that in Spruce Meadows.
Yeah, that game is going to be awesome. Also, I think that FC Edmonton has a good shot. You look.
A lot of people wouldn't say that.
But
I wouldn't say that based on the early returns.
Well, they got to lose at some point, no?
Okay, you looked at the Pacific game. I know you weren't necessarily impressed with the way they played.
Yeah, not at all.
But down to 10 men, and they really limited Pacific. They basically had no chances on net in the second half that were decent. And I think that Edmonton has probably the best defense to deal with Cavalry, specifically on set pieces, right? They've got some of the biggest center backs.
They've shown well, which is why I think they need to get away from this whole let's go forward, play expansive football. I think they need to be that first CPL team. And I said this on the show on the match day. I think they need to be that first CPL team that has an identity where they sit back, they're big in almost every position, and then they break out going forward. They have guys that can get out, then Diak, Randy, when Tomi Amiobi comes back, but I think they need to establish that as their identity, to sit back, and then we can hurt you going forward.
But they did that against Valor, their first game. And that was very
I don't think
effective.
it was by design, though. I think it was because Valor was better than them.
Well, it could be by design. If there's any head coach that would throw a curveball towards the other head coaches, it is Jeff Paulus. So perhaps he was building a defensively minded team and was just simply telling the media that he wants to be on the front foot.
And speaking of curveballs, I think Paulus came out in the media, told CanPL.ca Steve Sandor that the entire CPL is going to be rooting for us when we go play Calgary this weekend, because Calgary's so far out in front. Little mind games there. I mean, have you come to expect that from Jeff Paulus a little bit?
Yeah, but I love it. It's so good because, you know what, like it was mentioned on the broadcast last night ahead of the Pacific game for Cavalry, but they're the team to beat.
Yeah.
They are absolutely the team to beat.
So what does Edmonton need to do? They go into Spruce Meadows. Calvary's 3 for 3. I mean, do they go in with a game plan where they sit back? Do they press forward? Calvary's shown to hurt teams in different ways. They certainly need to plan for the set pieces Calvary's shown their expertise on.
Yeah, I would say having Emmer Didic in the back line, 6'4", is a huge help on a set piece, but he's one player. So he cannot really do everything by himself. He's going to need his teammates, and luckily I think Edmonton does a really good job of keeping solid banks of 4 lines. Like when they have their players kind of organized the way that they do, they're hard to break down, which is why we saw them so successfully stave off even
when they get a lead, they seem to drop back well and defend the top of the penalty area very well. That's what you're saying. The spacing between the midfield and the defense is very good.
Yeah, they're a very organized team, and ultimately, I think what they need to do in order to actually defeat Calgary is just stick to their fundamentals. I don't think they have to reinvent anything here. I think Calgary has shown that they're dangerous, yes, but they're also, I don't want to say one-dimensional, but so many of their goals have come from set pieces that if you can neutralize that and then keep the game close, it can be a 1-0 game and you walk out of Spruce Meadows with all smiles.
They've also shown for me that they're the deepest team in the league. We see them go midweek in the Cup match to play, at Pacific. They've rested a number of players. They bring in guys like Oliver Minitel off the bench. I mean, have they proven to be one of the deepest teams in the league based on who they've had to trot out early in the season?
We've seen how much CPL managers have been rotating their squads, and I think that's going to be the key to winning the whole thing. And yeah, they've showed it. Nico Pasquati as well. We haven't even mentioned him.
Yeah.
Incredible, like what he's got. Maybe
well, let's talk
maybe 110 minutes and 2 assists and a goal.
There's a lot of guys in the CPL. I mean, and Nico's one of them. So let's talk about him that have just kind of emerged from almost out of nowhere. I mean, Nico Pasquati, we know him from the Foothills on Tommy Wilden Jr.'s PDL team last year. Didn't play university ball in Canada, just kind of, I guess, trained with Foothills, and now he's 22, 23 years old, and for me, he's one of the more impact players coming off the bench in the CPL. I mean, what have you seen from Nico Pasquati in the early goings?
Well, I've seen some long throw-ins. Yeah. Those have been very impressive, and it's a dangerous weapon to have in your team. But the other thing that I was really impressed with was his affinity for actually managing to getting his cross off. Yeah. I mean, it's not an easy skill, especially as a wide player, to beat your fullback, especially in this league, which seems to have a decent dearth of fullback options. So the fact that he's managing to get on the front foot, get those crosses into the box, actually help his team with tangible output, that's incredibly valuable to have coming off the bench.
And without Jose Escalante, who we haven't even talked about right now, we're not really sure what the status of his injury is. I mean, Pasquati's got to be an excellent go-to choice for Tommy.
Yeah, and on Saturday it would be interesting to see if he ends up matching with Kareem Moses, who's been very impressive as a fullback for Edmonton. I'd love to see that battle.
So we talked about Calvary. Let's talk about who could potentially still knock them off as spring season champions. I think everybody right now universally believes that Calvary are in position to win the spring, just 3 games in. If you look at their schedule, pretty favorable. If you had to pick one team right now who could press them for the spring title and that berth into the CPL championship, who would it be?
Well, I think the obvious one is Forge. I think that they've shown that they have the level of quality in their players to actually challenge teams. In that match, there was a pretty close match. It took a last gasp winner for Calvary to actually edge that result. But I think Forge has the makings of a team that can adequately challenge them. But that's
somebody we picked in the preseason to be a top 2 team was Calvary and Forge.
Yeah, but I think the other team that we still don't really know too much about is Edmonton. We haven't really seen them at their full potential, and I think that this Saturday's match is an opportunity for Edmonton to show that they are contenders in the spring portion of the season as well.
Marty?
Yeah. They've got games at hands too, which is obviously going to be valuable. I'm going to pick Valor on this one. Another deep team. To me, it's Cavalry, and then it's Valor. Like Ali Musi coming on and being one of the best attackers we've seen in the league so far.
Okay, yeah.
Dylan Carrero coming off the bench and scoring. They've got good depth, and with the injuries that they're looking at, obviously Mitter is out. So yeah, I think it's gonna be them.
I'm going with York9. Bottom of the table right now. It's going to surprise a few people potentially.
It surprised me.
But okay, so I look at their schedule. I have it written down right here, so I'm going to read it in a second. I look at their schedule. They're at Pacific this weekend, which you have to think is a winnable game for a team like York9, because if you look at Pacific right now, the body language isn't there. Michael Silverbar, he seems disappointed on the sideline quite frequently.
Baffled.
He's trying to get his team back on track. So they're fragile right now. York9, they're a little bit fresher, I would think. Mm-hmm. But look at their schedule coming up. They're at Pacific, okay? They're home to Forge in their home opener. Difficult test, but it's their home opener. Then they're at Halifax, which for me I think is a winnable away game for them. I think it's pretty even there. But then it's Pacific at home, followed by FC Edmonton home, followed by Halifax at home, followed by Cavalry at home. 4 consecutive home games. If they can get to that stretch and be in contention, you have to like them to do something.
Yeah, but I think that Halifax away trip is going to be bad. I think it's going to be tough for them. And also, you mentioned that that Pacific has bad body language, but the game against Plainville, man.
It was difficult. It was on the road. It's a cup match. What do you think of York9? What do you think of my projection of York9?
I think having 4 home games in a row, by the time the third one comes around, you'll have enough confidence that you can start looking at those opponents and saying 3 points there, 3 points there. Even if you take 6 out of those 4 matches, that's not bad for them. I think the way that the spring portion of the season is, with only 10 matches and so many of them already been played, I think Cavalry's gap is too wide. So the only teams that I can see adequately challenging them are ones who are already sort of in contention. So I think York might just be a little bit out of the way.
We're going to take a quick break. We're going to come back with a few more storylines emerging from across the CPL.
Our journey began with the spark of an idea.
The beautiful game played coast to coast.
United by soccer under one flag.
And with the promise to you that we'll always hold true.
Our league was made for Canadians, by Canadians.
The journey was long, but you brought us here.
Like the ocean, we will be a formidable force.
And all of this was possible because of you. You, our supporters, turned this idea into a movement. You, our believers, help guide us along this path. To all Canadians in all our communities, I'd like to thank you for your unending passion and welcome you all to the Canadian Premier League. Remember always that this league is for you. And remember, too, the words that define us.
We are many.
We are one.
Kickoff Countdown, a little change of gears here, switch of pace. I want the CPL player who deserves more recognition at this point in the season than they're getting. Let's start with Armen.
More recognition, okay. Well, I think a lot of players have emerged as stars of their teams. One player that I would say has been kind of a standout for Pacific has been Ben Fisk, but I think this should really go to somebody who's under the radar. And for me, it's Valor FC midfielder Louis Belangoye.
Yeah.
I think he's been so clean in his touch, and he has this ability to control the ball, turn, and pass with a perfectly weighted cross to his wide teammates. And he does it so effectively and so often that he's really caught my eye in that sense.
And how important is he going to be now with Josip Goluber out? Mm-hmm. I think we've heard different reports about his knee being injured. Is that long term? We're not sure yet. I mean, if Valor is going to make any kind of run, in the spring and the fall. I mean, how big is that player going to be for them to replace that?
I think he's going to be.
Gallagher's been good, so that's why. Yeah.
No, Gallagher's been very important, and the fact that they have Belangoye to service all the rest of the attacking pieces of that team is going to be vital for any success that team finds this year. The beauty of Valor's sort of lineup is the fact that they have so many of these versatile attacking midfielders like Michael Petrasso, Marco Bustos, and then they bring in guys like Stephen Hoyle. So you need a guy who can kind of anchor that midfield for you and also provide service. And the fact that he can do both of those roles so effectively, I think makes him an incredible player.
And Marty, the funny thing about Valor is that I think all of us kind of agreed in preseason from watching them, maybe they were a bit slow to get started. So it's been positive to see them pick up results early in the season.
Yeah, and Belangoye has played, I believe, every single minute that they've had. And as you mentioned, just the perfect pivot and the perfect anchor for them. I'm going to go with Caden Chung at Pacific. Yeah. That's a player that is playing on a team that, as we mentioned, was on kind of an unfortunate run of form. But you watch back even the game against Cavalry, gets up the field really well, is a good complement to Ben Fisk. I would love to see him at a wing-back position, but I don't think that's
the weird thing about Pacific
be able to go three at the back.
That's the strange thing about Pacific right now, though, is I think they have these little pieces all over the field. I mean, I think Staro's probably one of the best center backs in the league. Caden Chung is one of the best young players in the league. Noah Verhoeven, he's up and down for me, but he's shown flashes. So, I mean, it's a good pick, Caden Chung, but it's can they bring all the pieces together?
But if they had another quality center back, if you went three at the back, Caden Chung would be perfect at a wing-back position. I'm going
with Dominic Zator for mine. I wanted to go with. I thought one of you guys would pick Nico Pesquati, but we already talked about that a little bit. I mean, Zator for me, a little bit of pedigree coming into the season. You know, he was with Whitecaps too, but just the way he manages the game is impressive. He keeps everything in front of him. You never see him caught in a situation where he's backpedaling. And then also on set pieces, I mean, he attacks every ball. He has 2 goals. He's the co-leading Golden Boot winner or Golden Boot scorer right now.
Golden Head, maybe.
In the league. He just looks like a statue. He just looks the part as well, which I love. Which I love about him. Let's go to a story that you think is emerging that no one's talking about that you think deserves a little bit more attention.
I think we touched on it a little earlier. My story that I've been most interested about is FC Edmonton's style of play, because Jeff Paul has told us one thing, but something else has emerged. But in light of that, I think the other story that I'm interested in is Emery Welshman's position on the field. I think he started off as a center forward, but it's emerged that I think he might be better utilized out wide, and it looks like Bobby Smirniotis has seen the same thing. I have a lot of hopes for Emery Welshman. I think he's got a very high ceiling, and I think he's one of those players who really benefits from having a Canadian Premier League to play in.
It's going to be important for him too to get going, because he's going to the Gold Cup most likely with Guyana this summer. So it's, have we been impressed with how he's played? Has the preparation gone well?
Yeah, I mean, if he's just a little more fortuitous in that first 6 minutes of the season, he scores one of the goals of the year on that acrobatic effort. But I think he's one of those players who will always be involved in the attacking play. He's not an anonymous player on the field, and I think the more that you can get the ball to his feet, the better off your overall attacking look will be. And I think that's what Bobby Smirniotis is probably trying to get out of having both Welshman and guys like Cadell Thomas on the field.
What have you thought of Emery?
He's been really good. He has really been, again, unlucky to score maybe 2 or 3 goals on that opening day. Great assist on that opening day as well. It is interesting to see how forwards line up, because we talked about that they have that kind of that fluid front four of all of them kind of interchanging, but I think he might work better with a Novak. I think he might work better with someone to play off.
I'm gonna give you mine. I mean, mine is just the emergence of these U Sports players. I don't think U Sports gets anywhere near the credit it deserves compared to the NCAA. I played in the NCAA. I played against some of the best, current MLS players who were in the NCAA during my time there. But you look at the U Sports players, specifically the defenders that are coming out. Peter Schall at Halifax out of Cape Breton has been fantastic. Andre Bona for them has been fantastic. Connor James out of the University of Alberta has been, pretty good in goal for Edmonton. And Joel Waterman out of Trinity Western. There's a lot of players who I'm not quite sure where they would have been after U Sports had this league not come about. I mean, have you been impressed with these kind of young players that are coming out of the college system in Canada?
I remember I used to cover even Ryerson's kind of journeys in U Sports, and I was always taken by the quality of players that were available in this system. I think we're finally starting to see the fruits of what U Sports is producing, and I think this partnership with CPL is beneficial not just to the league, but to these players who are obviously talented. They're obviously good enough to perform and even be starters in this league. So there's definitely kind of an emergence of university sports anyways across Canada, and I think CPL is facilitating that in the world of soccer too now.
So we're going to move on to Philip Lincourt-Joseph, the FC Edmonton player, who pretty bad tackle against Pacific from what I saw. A straight red card. Armen disagrees a little bit. We're going to roll it here in a second and talk about it. But just initial impressions of that tackle. It's kind of contentious right now. There's some talk about will he get a few more games of a suspension, being that it was a straight red card. What did you first see from that?
Yeah, I don't know. I think to me it's one of those orange card situations where it can either be yellow or a red. I think a straight red is probably fair. Yeah, we see it right here. I think he does mistime his tackle. There's no doubt about that. It's definitely not the best sliding tackle. And anytime you go in studs up, you're not really going to get the referee's sympathy on it. But that being said, I mean,
but okay, if he's a couple inches higher and gets his knee, that's the kind of tackle that, I think it was McCurdy who got tackled there. He probably wouldn't play for the rest of the game.
Yeah,
I mean, it's to me, it's very dangerous.
There's no question it's a red card for me. I think you're out of your mind for saying it's an orange card. I feel like I've never even heard of that expression. I'm with Marty on this. I don't think there's anything malicious there, but as I said on the show at the time, my initial impressions of that tackle was I actually thought McCurdy was seriously injured because he does catch him kind of on the side of the shin guard where it's not totally covering the shin.
And you see kind of a leg go up.
He's late. It's high. It's for sure a red card for me, and I guess we're just going to see, should there be more games added on in this case?
I wouldn't give any more games for that. I think the red card is probably a fair punishment for the challenge. If I was a lenient ref, I might have just given the yellow for it anyways, but I don't think that he needs to, earn a 3-game suspension for it the way that maybe Kyle Becker did for his challenge in that inaugural match. The other thing is with these players is there has to be a certain degree of understanding that because it's a young league and many of these players are playing professionally for the first time, that even the punishments that are given are learning lessons for these guys.
Philip Lincourt-Joseph's not a professional for the first time.
Well, that's true, but he's still a young player, I would say, and there's lessons to be learned here. I think that as the league sort of evolves, we'll see these kinds of challenges maybe dwindle away or even become a little bit more malicious as they're maybe intentionally kind of conceded.
Has it been a rough start to the league, Marty?
Yeah, it has been, but
not in a bad way though.
No, not in a bad way at all. I mean, that first game, it kind of set the tone for it.
Yeah.
To me, this tackle is multiple games.
Yeah, it's been entertaining.
It's multiple games.
Absolutely. We're going to take a quick break. Come back. We're going to talk a little bit more about the emerging storylines in the league right now.
There's something new in the air. It's like a new beginning, like stadiums eagerly awaiting the crowds, of reaching for the sky, of a new game in town. The Canadian Premier League, a new competition for a country that's hungry for soccer. A league that will show the world that Canadian soccer is taking its rightful place among the giants of the game. And to give a voice to all of Canadian soccer, we present OneSoccer. A place where you can watch every single minute of every game from the Canadian Premier League. A space that will provide top quality coverage of the games between Pacific, Cavalry, FC Edmonton, Valor, Forge, York9, and HFX Wanderers. OneSoccer will also show games from Ontario's League One. And there's more, hours and hours of original content, so that you can live the game beyond the 90 minutes on the field. There's something new in the air. Stay tuned to see how history will be made on OneSoccer.
Spring season's almost halfway done.
Crazy.
It's unbelievable, right? So we're halfway through the spring schedule. Mm-hmm. Give me, an emerging storyline just, for the second half, a bold prediction that you think is going to come true through the rest of the spring season.
A bold prediction. Okay, well, the last time I gave a bold prediction, I backed Pacific FC, and I think I'll do that again. Yeah,
You're going with Pacific FC again.
I think I'm going to...
The same team at the start of the season, you said, was in great position to win the spring season.
Yes, before Marcel de Jong was unfortunately injured. I'm going to say that Pacific FC is going to turn some heads in the second portion of the season. I think Marcus Haber's now back in that mix, and he's leading, or he's one of the leading strikers when it comes to shots on goal. So I think once he starts potting in those goals, I can see Pacific maybe winning 2 or 3 games in a row and maybe turning their fortunes around. Yeah. It all really depends on Marcus Haber.
Because they're a young team. I mean, I think that's the one thing we've identified about Pacific is that they're capable of going on a run of pretty good to decent performances, and then also a run of really poor performances. I mean, so are you anywhere close to that with Pacific?
Yeah, I can see your point, because the other thing too is they get really good possession.
Yeah.
If you look at their games, they control the ball well. They have very good midfield, but you're right. It's just, and I don't think Marcus Haber is going to be able to knock the goals in for them. So I think that's where it stops. But
give us your bold prediction.
Kurt, you were listing all those York9 games, and every time result after result. Result after result, I'm like, I don't think they're gonna win another game this spring season.
You don't think York9 is going to win another game in the spring season?
No. I think they're going to go.
Back me up on this.
Winless in the entire spring season?
They're going to go winless.
Wow. That's a really bold prediction.
I'm going with Connor James for me.
I thought Kurt was going to come at me.
No, I mean I've already made my point. Like for me that's a ridiculous statement.
That's too bold.
So for me, Connor James, and I think this is pretty safe. He's been one of the best goalkeepers so far, in the league. A big reason why FC Edmonton's still undefeated. I'm going with him to collect the most clean sheets in the spring season through 10 games. He already has one.
That's not bold enough.
So, well, that's a safe pick. But how has Connor James performed?
So Connor James, I remember in preseason, I won't name names, but there was a little bit of a saying that was around him that was, if he was in the body of Dylan Powley, he'd be the perfect goalkeeper. Yeah. Connor James's only drawback is maybe just a little shorter than the other alternative at FC Edmonton, but I think he's been admirable.
Okay, we've been speaking about. Go ahead.
No, I do think that's a good shout, because again, I think FC Edmonton probably has the best defensive unit. So yeah,
he's come out of nowhere too. I mean, in our early season projections, we had Connor James nowhere near being one of the best goalkeepers in the league, right?
Like 6th or 5th. Yeah.
So we're going from CPL quickly to Canadian men's national team. The Gold Cup preliminary roster was supposed to be submitted this week. We haven't seen it just yet, but give me one CPLer that you think John Herdman should take, at least on that preliminary, 40-man Gold Cup roster.
I said this at the start of the season, and I'm going to follow it up here. I think Michael Petrasso is the one for me.
But as a defender or a forward?
Well, that's the thing. He could play both. I think he's had a very impressive preseason.
Yes.
Obviously putting away that penalty, but assisting that goal for Stephen Hoyle in the first goal of Valor's history. I think to me he's got the versatility to him, and he adds something that the team really doesn't.
Well, first, what have you thought of Petrasso just in these?
Well, I thought Petrasso's move up top was a very interesting one, an inspired one for Valor FC, who needed that kind of versatile attacker up top to complement Stephen Hoyle, and I think he's delivered. Now that they have Marco Bustos in the fold, though, I'm wondering if his role will evolve once again, if we'll see him maybe utilized as more of a right midfielder, or if he'll even, do some sort of Christmas tree where it's Bustos and Petrasso together with Hoyle up top. So there's options, which is always good to have if you're Rob.
Give me your picks.
So I'm going to do you one better, and I'm going to give you 4. I'm going to give you 4 players who should probably be in that preliminary roster, because Canada's pretty, I would say, deep when it comes to their attacking positions. Alphonso Davies, Jonathan David, there's a lot of talent there. But the back line, I think, is prime real estate for some of our CPL talents. So I'm going to go Caden Chung at right back. Okay. Then at left back, I'm going to go...
That's because they're not that deep at right back right now, to be honest. Like, the selection is very small right now.
Michael Petrasso's playing there.
Yeah. So I'm going to say Caden Chung at right back, and then Zella Langwa from HFX as the left back.
Oh, that's a good one.
Yeah, I think he's been lights out. And then center backs, I'm going to say Luca Gasparotto from York9 FC has been lights out, and then Jordan Morel from Valor FC.
I'm going with Nick Ledgerwood for my pick. We got about a minute left. Let's get in our weekend predictions. Let's start with Marty.
0-0 for York and Pacific.
Okay.
I might fall asleep during it. I don't know. And 2-1 for FC Edmonton. I think they're going to nick it.
No, I can see York 9 getting their first win. I'm going to say 1-0 York 9, and then let's say 2-2 for El Clasico. I think it's going to go back and forth, and we're going to see Edmonton really start to express themselves in this one.
So why do you think it's going to go back and forth, though?
Because I think that we haven't really had a chance to see an 11-man Edmonton on the front foot, and I think now that they have got like the fire of this rivalry, they'll take it to them.
I'm going Y9-2, Pacific 1, so York 9 will get a win. And I'm going with a blowout in the El Clasico. Cavalry 3, FC Edmonton 0. That's all the time we have for today. We're going to get out of here. Thanks for watching the show. Enjoy the weekend.